Let me ask you a question. Have you ever worked really hard in the practice room, put a lot of hours in working on a particular piece of music, and then when you finally got on stage, you finally got to your gig to perform whatever music it was that you wanted to play, everything just tanked and it didn't go very well? Has it ever happened to you? Well, it's happened to just about everybody, and that's why on today's episode, I have a very special guest on to talk to us about how to practice towards fail-proof performances. But before we jump into that, let's cue the music.
Welcome to the LJS podcast, where you get weekly jazz tips, interviews, stories, and advice for becoming a better jazz musician. And now your host. He's a jazz musician, author, and entrepreneur, Brent Vaartstra.
All right, hey, what's up, everybody? Brent here. I'm the jazz musician behind LearnJazzStandards.com, a blog, a podcast, and videos, all geared towards helping you become a better jazz musician. Hey, I am totally excited today because, like I said, we have a special guest on the show, and this guy, he's been on the show before, and I like having him back because he always just unloads a ton of valuable information, not only on you, but on me, too. I learned a lot from him, and that is drummer, composer, jazz musician in general, Diego Maldonado. So excited. He's going to talk to us about how to practice towards fail-proof performances, because Diego is a practicer who knows how to really make improvements in the practice room and then go out there and just play on this incredibly professional level. And I've been playing with him for years. I've known him for many years now, and he's just a musician that I look up to, and I know that you will too, and get a lot of value from him. So definitely stick around. You can find him at DiegoTheDrummer.com, and of course, you can also find him on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot at Diego the Drummer. So definitely check him out. Now, this is, while Diego is a drummer, this is, of course, advice for every instrumentalist. So definitely stick around for all of that. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to this show yet, make sure you do that. Click that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's on iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher, whatever it is. Make sure you subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss anything that is going on here. We have so many great episodes planned for the future, and I'm really actually looking forward to these upcoming episodes coming up. So definitely make sure you are subscribed. And hey, I'm going to stop talking. Let's jump into this talk with Diego Maldonado. All right, welcoming on the show today is drummer, jazz musician, teacher, composer, Diego Maldonado. My good friend, Diego, thanks for being back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Brand. It's always a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Man, I'm really excited because, you just have so much to talk about when it comes to, you're one of the musicians I know that is just a notorious hardcore practicer. And, ever since I've known you, which I think we've known each other for like 8 years or something like that, you are just always in the practice room. Even after college, you got your little practice studio out in Williamsburg that you're just, you're going out there all the time and you're just shedding. You're someone that when I think about a practicer that I look up to, you're one of them. So I know you're just going to unload a ton of value on the audience today. But you've been on the show before, so those who've been listening to the show since the early days when you were first on it probably recognize you. But for those who don't, why don't you give everybody the 1-minute Diego Maldonado bio, who you are, what you're all about.
All right. So I am originally from Venezuela, in South America. I moved to New York City for good about 9 years ago. I went to the City College of New York. I studied with great teachers there, with like Mike Oliver, Scott Reeve, also with drummers like Adam Cruz, Mark Ferber, and Kendra Scott. Well, I'm pretty much a session drummer. Been playing gigs here in the United States with a bunch of different artists, from jazz to singer-songwriters, pop, rock, and that's exactly the same that I used to do in Venezuela. Before I moved to New York City, I was pretty dedicated to education. I was teaching in one of the largest and prestigious jazz and contemporary music academies in Venezuela, in Caracas, called El Taller de Jazz. And yeah, well, my career has been pretty much about performing, and also I'm pretty passionate about education. So I've been investing a lot of my time, or my professional time, being the best teacher I can be, because I think as it is important for us musicians to perform, it's also important to know how to pass the information and the knowledge that we gain through the years and experience, though. So that's pretty much what I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first met you, you had already like a really successful career going on in Venezuela. Then you moved over to New York, and you just been doing it ever since. Just a really inspiring character for sure. And so let's go back a little further though, as far as like, how did you get started even into music? Like, what got you inspired? And maybe eventually you really kind of started really focusing on jazz, even though you play a lot of other different styles of music. How did that all come about?
I think was just listening to a lot of music when I was growing up. When I was little, my dad and my older brother, they were like really like music lovers, and my dad used to have a huge record collection, and the same, my brother used to have tons of CDs and every kind of music. I was listening to rock, jazz, Latin music, big bands, everything. And I used to spend all my afternoon just like going through records and CDs and stuff like that. And at some point when I was like 9-10 years old, I fell in love with the drums, and I was like air drumming every day while listening to music. So that went on for like 2 years, and my parents saw that I was kind of serious about drumming, because I was like, making my own drumsticks out of little wood that I would find around, and just banging everything, And when I was like maybe 10 or 11 years old, my parents gave me this really crappy, cheap drum set to see if I was going to be serious about, and I didn't stop since then. So that was pretty much how I got into.
I always like hearing like stories of people, how they got into the whole thing, because it's really kind of interesting to hear how like something can change your life so much, and just like completely change the directory of your life. And I don't know, just those little choices that happen, and just to understand the evolution, just understanding like the evolution of you as a musician, and just understanding where you come from. I think those stories are really important, especially when it comes to just in general, when we're trying to improve as musicians, to understand those backgrounds and to understand how great musicians came to be where they are. Exactly. And even to look at your own story and just see where you came from and how you got into the music. And everybody's stories is so different, so I always ask that question. Now, I'm, like I said a little bit earlier, I'm excited to have you on to talk, because you're somebody that just is a serial practicer, but you're not just someone that practices for the sake of practicing. Like, when I hear about the things that you're working on in the practice room, like you're working on things, you're working on the right things, you're working on things in such a way that you actually produce real results in your playing. And, I've been playing with you for over 8 years or something like that. Yeah. And it's been incredible. Like, we just played a gig last week, and I felt like it was an incredible gig. Like, all the musicians just came together and played really strongly, and just to see like all the improvement that all of us have gone through. Yeah. So I really want to just start picking your brain. I know my audience wants to get inside of that a little bit. So let me just start with that basic question.
Sure.
What are some of the things that aspiring jazz musicians, and maybe musicians even in general, should be practicing and working on?
Okay. For me, practicing, I don't think there's one rule like this is it, and because it depends on your goals. It depends on what kind of musician you want to be, and also what kind of music you want to play, right? So I think before you set up a practice routine, you really need to know where you are at the moment, right? What are the things that you want to accomplish, and from there you can really set up the best practice routine for yourself. So that's what I've been, because I use my practice routine as an experiment for myself. I'm not only practice for be a better musician, but also for things that I want to teach and see if they actually work. Right. So that's what I've been discovering, that there's no one way to practice. You need some basic stuff, like obviously you need to practice your technique, but after that, you it depends on your goals and what kind of musician you want to be. If you want to be a session drummer, you better spend some time sight reading. For instance, if you want to be a jazz drummer, you're gonna need to learn a lot of repertoire, so you want to spend some time learning new music. But if you want to be a pop drummer, you don't need to learn that repertoire. You need to get a really, really deep pocket and make those beat sounds really tight. So it depends on what kind of musician you want to be, and that's what is going to give you the right routine and the right things to practice on the practice room, though.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you're mentioning that. That's something that I teach as well, is kind of starting. I mean, if you don't have this overarching goal or focus that you're actually working towards, you probably really don't know how to set up an action plan to actually accomplish those things. So when you have that vision, and a lot of people skip that, I like to call it master goals. Like if you don't have that master goal, it's like that big picture goal. And it's not even like, I want to learn, let's just say, for example, 50 tunes. That's not a goal. What you're looking for is you're looking for a transformation. Like, what is that transformation? Like you were saying, if you want to be a session musician, right? That's a transformation. Like, what does that look like for you? And then you can break it down and figure out, how do I actually get to those points? What are some...
Exactly.
Yeah, go for it.
No. Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, I think I said it before, but... obviously, when you're starting out, there's some basic things that you have to cover, and every musician have to go for it, or go through it. And once that is done, right, you before you need to get your technique together, a good tempo, learning how to read music, all your theory, all those stuff, and that's gonna take maybe a few years to master, right? But once you get that, you really need to find your passion within the music, right? And that's when you set those, as you were saying, your master goals and go for it. But of course, at first, when you're starting out with your instruments, you need to go for all, get your foundations really strong.
Right, absolutely. What are some things that you see aspiring jazz musicians, maybe in general, that you've taught in the past, whether they be drummers or other instrumentalists? What are some things that you see that like hold them back, that you see are things that are stopping them from just moving on to the next level?
Well, one thing is sometimes they don't know what to really practice, and they have not been paying attention to what they really need to become the musician they want to be. And also I talk about this a lot, and is you have to prepare yourself for performances, because that's what you want to be. If you want to be a musician, you don't want to just play at your practice room. You want to play for an audience, and that's a different animal than just performing in your garage. You have to prepare yourself to perform on a stage, and that's something that sometimes we don't take into account when we practice, but you gotta do it, and because when you're on the stage, it's different. It's not the same, And I think that's something you see a lot of musicians. They can play really great in their practice room, but and I went through that. I was one of them. And then when you go to a stage, you kind of like, everything goes away, and you don't know what to do, and so that's something that you really need to overcome.
That's a really good point, and I think we don't talk about, and then we haven't really talked a lot about that on this show, and I think I want to hone in and zero in on that a little bit, because we oftentimes we spend a lot of time practicing, and we have teachers that tell us what to practice, and we spend a lot of time doing that, and then I'm sure I know I can relate, you can relate, and I know that some of the listeners right now can relate of going out there, you practice really hard, and then you get up there on the stage or at the jam session or whatever it may be, and everything's different. Suddenly there's nerves, suddenly there's egos, suddenly there's not the amplifier isn't what you wanted, the cymbals aren't what you wanted, it's not your bass, whatever it may be, the room sounds funny, and it's in the moment, so you maybe weren't prepared for playing things at that speed. There's so many different variables that when it comes to a performing situation, maybe that's not what we were preparing for in the practice room. Yeah,
we never take those into account, and that's what I was saying. And because we usually set up our practice room for the perfect conditions, You have your really nice posters on the walls. You have your really nice PA, so you can play along to your tracks, and the room sounds great. You have the right amount of reverb, whatever, and so there's no distractions, and that's good because you really focus on the things that you want to do and you want to learn. But when you get to the stage, it's never going to be like that. Never. So, I remember a few years ago, I had this gig outdoors on a summer, and it was over 100 degrees, and I almost passed out. And you don't get prepared for that kind of things, because you have your AC in your practice room, and it's perfect. So there are a lot of things that comes up on a gig that take our concentration away, and our brain's not ready for that, and we need to take those into account when we practice, though.
So the moral of the story is practice dehydrated at least 3 times a week.
turn off your AC sometimes, But the thing
sweat it out.
Sweat it out. But the thing is, that was an example, but it's not about it. The situation really affect me because before I felt a little bit sick, I was thinking about that,
right,
and that's taking brain capacity out of me. So I'm not playing at the same level because I'm thinking, wow, this is too hot. I'm sweating. I'm feeling dizzy. I'm feeling sick, and that's that really affect your playing, and you gotta. It's not even the situation. It's what you're thinking while you're playing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you nailed it. It's what's going through your head and how that's affecting you, the ability that you. The key is the ability that you prepared for. Right, exactly. You didn't prepare. It's not that you need to prepare to be dehydrated or sick. It's that you needed to prepare that your ability to play that music was at a high enough level that you could overcome that. So let's dive into that really quickly. So how do we do that? How do we prepare ourselves, so that no matter what happens when we get up on to play, that whatever kind of music we're trying to do, whatever it is, we're going to be able to nail it. How do we do that?
Okay. There's a concept that I heard from some of my teachers, and I've heard a bunch of amazing and accomplished musicians talking about this, and they call this the headroom. And It's pretty simple, though. What it means is that we have to pretty much over prepare for any situation, right? So we have to be able to do more more than what is actually required to do on a gig, and we can definitely practice that. And it's not anything like innovative or anything, because a lot of different fields in life use this kind of same concept. If you're gonna build a house, you're not gonna make the foundation just enough to support 5 people inside the house, right? That would be dangerous, because if one day you have a party, the house is gonna collapse. So you build foundations so you can get 100 people inside that house, even though only 5 people is gonna live in there, right? So
Right.
it's kind of the same concept, and you apply that to music. For me as a drummer, maybe 90% of my gigs are gonna just require me to be able to have really nice, solid time feel, right? And I just need to listen, make sure that I'm connecting with the people I'm playing with. And if I just practice that, I might be able to do that, but at the moment something comes to the gig, any issue that's gonna affect my playing, and maybe I'm not gonna be able even to do that, right? So, for instance, when I practice comping, I sometimes, instead of just keeping my hi-hat in 2/4, I'm keeping my hi-hat on a 5/4 pattern. So I'm creating kind of a layer of something more difficult than what I'm gonna do at the gig. So when I take that off and I come back to play 2/4 on my left foot, it's so easy that it's pretty much impossible for me to mess it up. So
Right.
that kind of things. That's the kind of what the concept actually means. It's just do the things that you have to do, but add layers of difficulty. So when you take those off, the action that you are required to do, it becomes so easy, so second nature, that just not gonna mess it up, never, even if you want to.
I resonate with that, especially I've done this with tempos where it's like maybe I played a gig or something and I was like, oh man, that fast tempo really kind of got me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you kind of just emulate that fast tempo, that's one thing. But I find that if I I exceed that, like go even like practice even faster than what that was, then all of a sudden I go back to that tempo that I was struggling with, and I'm like, wait, this is way easier. And I think that's kind of the basic.
Easier. Yeah.
It's the basic core of that concept.
Yeah.
Is like, what other ways, like what are maybe some other scenarios, like we talked about tempos, we just talked about time signatures there. What are maybe some other ways to practice this headroom concept and over prepare?
It depends on what you need, basically. For instance, if you're learning repertoire, right? Just don't learn the song in one key, because if one day somebody wanna change the original key, you're doomed. So learn 12 keys, right? If for instance, try to put yourself distractions on the practice room. Sometimes that is good. I remember I used to have a teacher at City College, and he asked me to trade with myself for like trading solos with myself, and he would put a magazine in the music stand, and he will ask me to read an article while I was trading fours with myself. And at first I was, this is ridiculous. And why should I be doing this? But then I realized when I stopped reading and just trading with myself, it was so much easier, and just my brain capacity went up, because now I took that action off and I was just able to put more focus and concentrate better just doing your trading force, right? That I mean, there's so many things that you can do. You can apply that to dynamics too. You know, if you are working on like wider range of dynamics, you know, just go extremely soft and see if you can how loud you can go, and go extremely loud. Maybe you're never gonna use that on a gig, but if one day somebody asks you to do it, you're gonna be able to do it, right? And for instance, for drummers, that's great, because sometimes we play on, like, you know, restaurant gigs or like background gigs, and you really have to play soft, and that's something that drummers hate, right? And but if you try to practice everything that you do, and see if you can do it like extremely soft, and you see how challenging that is. But then when you go to a gig and you have to play to a normal volume, normal level, you're gonna really feel the difference, though. That now you're gonna be playing way better, though. So that, I mean, the applications are limitless. It's depending on whatever if you need to learn a repertoire and you have a bunch of charts, you know, and so play those charts way faster than you are asked to do it, way slower than you have to. You know, you can apply dynamics to those charts. I mean, you can do there's so many things, though.
Right. Yeah, I love this. And I was just thinking of another one while you were talking, and like this is a good one for I guess horn players or anybody who, you know, has plays single note lines. Is like a lot of times I find there's people sometimes, especially beginners, have an issue playing like longer flowing complete lines. Like they sometimes tend to be a little bit choppy, like, you know, broken up like phrases, and not necessarily in a nice rhythmic way, and just sort of like, I don't know how to complete this idea sort of a way. And one great thing you could do, and like you were saying, you wouldn't actually perform this way, and that's kind of the point. But you could just like practice going through improvising over a tune, doing all quarter notes, and you could try doing all eighth notes or all triplets. Like you wouldn't actually want to perform that way, but you're overemphasizing that, and by overemphasizing that, it's just going to make it easier for you to, you know, play those in a nice fluid way. That's just a little idea for people. And also I love the different keys things. And that's why I often preach the 12 keys idea, or at least going through something in multiple keys. And there's so many different reasons, but but that's actually something I haven't really talked about before, is that over preparation of just wanting to excel at a piece and maybe its original key. If you can play it in the other keys, it's going to be easier that way.
There's another thing that you can do. It's just work on different styles, you know, and things that maybe you're never gonna do on your life. But if, for instance, if you're learning a new song, you know, just don't just learn the song on the traditional medium swing tempo, right? You just can go and try to make it feel good on a Latin beat, or on a rock beat, or on a funk beat, or if you're into African music, like you can download like an Afro pop kind of beat and see if you can make the melody feel good. So all those things, because you never know what kind of drummer you're gonna find, and sometimes every drummer and every rhythm section has a different feel, and you have to kind of vary the way you phrase your melodies and your phrases. So that's another thing that you can do, you know, and it's just be creative and add things to your regular things. For instance, something that I used to work with, I used to have this. It was a piano player, a student, used to play with me, and I asked him to do, you know, like comping exercises, but he was doing a sort of like an ostinato on his feet, and just doing like I think it was dotted quarter notes on his left foot while he was playing comping, and it was really challenging for him. But once he was able to do it, and then he took that off, and the change was. You could like perceive that immediately. You know, he was way more confident just playing comping with his hands, right after he's done with that, because I mean your brain just expand. It's like, oh, now it's so easy that you're just gonna do it better. You know what I'm saying?
That's amazing. Actually, that I when you said that, I was like, wow, that would be something that would really help me to do something like that. Like that would be. Yeah, and it's like, well, of course, when you're performing, it's not like you're going to be tapping, those dotted quarter notes, but
exactly
that rhythmic freedom, that feeling that it's training you.
Some of these exercises are not musical, maybe something that you're not going to use on a stage, but it's just you're just training your brain, just because you want to be able to, and why we do this, because that brain capacity that we are developing is the one that is gonna deal with the issues that come on the stage. So if I have the noisy table right next to me and my amp is not sounding good, and it's really hard to not think about that. But now that my brain capacity has expanded, I can deal with that and still play at a high level. You know what I'm saying?
It's exactly. It's like when you're going back to when you were dehydrated and all that stuff. It's not that you should be able to play while you're dehydrated. It's that your level of ability was so much higher than what the actual musical situation called for.
Exactly. So
I trained yourself
with
for that.
The issues that the issues that are right there that you're never. I mean, that's something that you cannot change, and it's not up to you. So there's always going to be something on the gig, the vibing guy or the vibing owner of the restaurant, whatever. There's so many things that can come up, and but the thing is, like, you have to be able to deal with that and not let that affect your playing. And doing these kind of like really hard exercises, and they might not be musical, but these exercises are not designed to be on the stage. They're just an exercise to build up your brain capacity.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, this is such great stuff. And I just thinking about how sometimes we wonder what we should practice, and we sit there and we think, but right now you just unloaded like a million different things you could practice over and above like the basics, like, learning language and learning songs and, all this stuff. Like, I'm even just thinking for myself right now, for my own playing, like, okay, if I add an Afro-Cuban beat to the back of that, that's going to be super hard for me because I'm not used to that. And, but that's also going to change the way I feel everything. So that if I just want to play swing, all of a sudden that's going to feel so much easier for me personally. So many things we can go with this. And I think the big challenge, the big takeaway for everybody listening right now in the audience is to think about something that you're working on right now, or think about something that you're struggling with when you're going out there and playing a gig, when you actually get out of the practice room, and identify that, and then figure out ways that you can apply this headroom concept and just really work that piece of musical material so that you can perform that over and above the call of duty. And so make that your challenge this week. Diego, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. For you're always such a great guest, and I just appreciate having you, and we'll continue to have you throughout the history of this podcast, which could be years and years and years, as long as people will listen. And but I also know that you have so much to offer to, so there might be some people that want to learn more from you and they want to get more from you. You're a brilliant musician. So how can people, start learning more from you, and how can they get involved in what you're doing?
People can follow me on my social media profiles. I'm on Facebook. It's Diego the Drummer site, and I'm also on Instagram at Diego the Drummer. I am teaching. I have time for Skype lessons for people that is not in New York City. If you would like to have a session with me, you can go to my website. It's www.diegothedrummer.com, and you can go to the contact page and shoot me an email. And I'm teaching through Skype, and also have time for private students here in New York City if you are in the area. And you can just you can just reach me through social media if you would like to just contact me and share your thoughts or your ideas. Always open.
Guys, I totally suggest you hit Diego up on some of this stuff. Whether you're a drummer or not, I know that everybody needs to have a consulting session every once in a while with a really professional, really knowledgeable musician like Diego. So whether you are a horn player, a piano player, or a drummer, and you just need someone to check up on where you're at and get some great direction on where to go, I highly suggest that you reach out to Diego and set up a session. You can go to diegothedrummer.com/contact to do that. Once again, Diego, thank you so much for just unloading heaps of value today, and look forward to having you back on in the future.
It's always my pleasure, and thanks for having me, and hope to be back soon.
All right, that's all for today's show. Hey, thank you so much for listening and for tuning in. You know, I don't take it for granted. I really do appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to hang out with me and, of course, hang out with our special guest, Diego Maldonado, today. And another special thanks to him just for giving up his time and just really, giving out his knowledge. And, it can't be appreciated enough. So, hey, listen, if you have not rated and reviewed this podcast yet, left a positive rating and review on iTunes or whatever your favorite podcasting service is, I want you to go do that right now, because that just helps support this show. It's a free way to do that, and it just really helps to have other people saying positive things about the show, and other people can see that, and helps build the listener base. So if you could do that, that'd be really awesome. Take a little time to do that. I'd really appreciate that. Hey, listen, we're going to be coming out with another episode next week. Can't stop, won't stop. As long as you're here, I'm here. So I'll see you next time with episode 121.
Thanks for listening to the LJS podcast, brought to you by LearnJazzStandards.com. Subscribe to the series on iTunes, and don't forget to join our jazz community at LearnJazzStandards.com/newsletter.